The jungle was damp, heavy with the smell of rotting vegetation and wet stone. Sergeant Darius Kane adjusted the filters on his helmet as his squad tramped through the undergrowth, boots sinking into mossy soil. His orders were simple: survey the perimeter of the Orvek outpost, confirm the transport lanes, and report back. He wasn't supposed to interfere. Not supposed to ask questions. Not supposed to care. But when the trees thinned and he caught sight of the camp, he froze. The Orvek slave pits sprawled in the hollow below, rows of timber palisades ringed with crude watchtowers. Smoke from burning refuse curled into the canopy. Inside, dozens of enormous figures toiled under the lash. They were feline in shape, their frames massive, easily twice the size of a human, shoulders broad, claws dulled and chained. Their striped fur was matted with sweat and dirt. He could hear the guttural roars and snarls of their labor, punctuated by the sharp crack of electrified whips. His squad moved on ahead, uninterested, but Kane lingered at the edge, his gaze snagging on one of them. She was larger than the rest, towering even among her kind. Her fur was pale beneath grime, and her long mane of deep orange hair was tied back with a frayed scrap of leather. Shackles bound her wrists, and the weight of her collar dragged her posture down, yet her eyes, bright gold, glowing faintly in the smoke, cut through the haze with defiance. Darius swallowed hard. He knew her species, the Veari, bred into slavery generations ago, their strength making them perfect labor stock. The Orvek Empire bought and sold them like beasts of burden. He wasn't supposed to intervene. Command had made that clear. Still, something about the sight gnawed at him. The closer he looked, the harder it was to remain detached. The feline giants hauled stone blocks up crude ramps, their chains rattling with every movement. The Orvek overseers barked orders, their armored figures patrolling with shock rods and rifles. The great feline woman stumbled under the weight of a block that should have taken 3 men to carry. She caught herself, muscles straining, tail lashing against the mud, before dragging the load up again. When the Orvek guard jeered and prodded her with a spear, she did not flinch. Darius exhaled slowly, fists clenched around his rifle. "This isn't your fight," he told himself. "These aren't your people. You're here to observe, to gather intel, nothing more." But the words rang hollow. He'd seen oppression before, on fringe worlds where civilians were ground beneath corporate boots. He'd seen helpless eyes staring out from behind cages. He'd ignored it then, because orders were orders. Because it was easier not to feel. This was different. Her eyes caught his again, and for a moment, he thought she saw him, hidden half in shadow, a stranger in full armor at the tree line. There was no plea in her gaze. No submission. Just a stubborn, quiet fury that spoke louder than words. They moved on, further down the ridge, the camp stretching wider. Barracks. Slave pens. Guard platforms linked by crude wooden planks. Kane's boots sank in the mud, his squad oblivious as they muttered about rations and patrol schedules. He didn't hear them. He couldn't stop replaying what he'd seen. The Orvek weren't just exploiting them, they were breaking them. Starving them. A gaunt cub barely up to the giant woman's knee dragged a chain of buckets while an overseer barked in its face. Another feline collapsed under the lash, curling in the mud, ignored until someone else was forced to take up their burden. Kane's jaw tightened. His gut twisted with every crack of the whip. He knew the report he was supposed to file. Camp confirmed. Veari slaves utilized as labor force. Guard presence heavy. Clinical. Detached. Nothing about the bruises on their fur, the way their shoulders sagged, or the wild hunger in their eyes. And nothing about her. That night, he lingered at the perimeter while the others settled in. The fires in the camp burned low, shadows flickering across the timber walls. He could still see her, chained apart from the rest, perhaps because she was too unruly, too strong. Her ears twitched at every sound. Chains clinked softly as she shifted, and then, unexpectedly, she lifted her gaze. Straight at him. Darius stiffened. He was certain she couldn't see him in the dark, not with his armor cloaked and visor dimmed. Yet her golden eyes seemed to pierce the gloom. He felt pinned by that look, caught between guilt and something else he didn't dare name. His comm crackled. "Kane! Report." He swallowed hard and looked away. "Perimeter secure. Nothing to note." The lie sat like acid in his throat. Morning brought the moment that shattered his restraint. The feline woman was ordered to haul a massive timber beam alone, a beam longer than a skimmer, bound with iron bands. Even for her size it was brutal. She braced herself, muscles coiling, and lifted, staggering under the strain. The overseers shouted, laughing as they prodded her forward. She bore it until the very end, until her knees buckled and the beam crashed into the mud. For an instant, she remained there on all fours, shoulders heaving, tail drooping low. The Orvech commander stormed forward, his whip crackling. He struck her across the back once, twice, until blood darkened her fur. She growled low, baring her fangs, but she did not rise. And then the commander pressed the shock rod to her throat. Her body convulsed, chains rattling violently. She gasped, claws digging furrows in the mud, teeth clenched against the scream tearing from her throat. Darius felt something inside him snap. Orders be damned. He leveled his rifle. And in that moment, through pain, through fire, her eyes found his once more. The shot cracked like thunder. The Orvech commander staggered backward, a smoking hole punched clean through his chest plate. His shock rod clattered to the ground, sputtering sparks into the mud. For a heartbeat, the entire camp froze, slaves and overseers alike staring in disbelief. Then the screaming began. "Kane, what the hell are you doing?" His squad leader's voice howled through his comm, but Kane wasn't listening anymore. He squeezed the trigger again, dropping another guard from the nearest watchtower before the alarm could even finish wailing. The camp erupted into chaos. Overseers scrambled for their rifles, shouting orders, while the Veari slaves reeled, wide-eyed, unsure if this was salvation or another cruelty. The great feline woman was still on her knees, chest heaving, blood striping her back. When her golden eyes met his again, they flared with a feral intensity, confusion, suspicion, and the faintest spark of something else. Kane sprinted down the ridge, his boots splashing mud. His squad's panicked shouts echoed behind him, but they didn't follow. He was on his own. He knew what this meant: desertion, court-martial, a bullet to the back if command caught him. He didn't care. He cared about the chains, about the fire in her eyes, about the way she looked at him as if daring him to act. The first Orvech soldier swung his rifle toward him, but Kane was already sliding into cover. His pulse rifle barked, cutting the overseer down. Another charged from the side with a shock spear, jabbing wildly. Kane sidestepped, seized the shaft, and jammed the buttstock of his own weapon into the alien's throat. "Get up!" Kane barked, turning toward the towering feline woman. Her ears flicked, chains dragging as she staggered upright. She was taller than he'd imagined, easily 12 feet if not more, her broad shoulders heaving with rage and exhaustion. For an instant, she simply stared at him, lips pulled back to reveal sharp, ivory fangs. "Move!" Kane shouted again, blasting another overseer who was drawing a bead on her. She hesitated, suspicion etched into every line of her powerful body. Then her gaze darted toward the fallen commander's shock rod. In one swift motion she seized it, snapped the chain binding her wrists against its sparking length, and roared. The sound shook the entire camp. What followed was a storm. She surged forward, even weakened and half-starved. Her strength was terrifying. One swipe of her clawed hand sent an armored guard sprawling. Another she grabbed by the collar and hurled into a support beam, splintering it with the force. Kane moved alongside her, covering her flanks with precision bursts, dropping enemies she couldn't reach. Together they carved a bloody path toward the outer fence. The slaves watched in stunned silence at first, but then a ripple of motion spread. Chains snapped, stones dropped, and voices rose in wild, desperate howls. The Veari threw themselves at their captors with tooth and claw, fighting with the strength of a people long denied their freedom. Kane's comm filled with frantic demands, orders to stand down, to disengage, to stop. He shut it off. The feline woman was a whirlwind beside him, but still her eyes flicked to him again and again, disbelief warring with suspicion. As if she could not fathom why this armored human had chosen her, why he hadn't turned away like all the others. The outer gate loomed ahead, thick timber lashed with iron, guarded by a mounted turret. Bullets chewed the earth around them as the guns spat hot metal, forcing them into cover. Kane's rifle hummed as it overheated, barrel glowing. He cursed under his breath. "We're not getting through that clean." The feline woman bared her fangs in a feral grin, then crouched low. With a guttural growl, she hefted the shattered beam she'd dropped earlier, half again her size, and hurled it with impossible strength. The turret operator had a single second to scream before the massive timber slammed into the platform, collapsing it in a spray of splinters and fire. Kane stared for half a heartbeat, stunned, then laughed, short and wild. "Not bad." She shot him a look, suspicion still smoldering behind her golden eyes, as though unsure if his laughter was mockery or admiration. But there was no time to answer. He shoved the gate lever, and together they forced their way into the jungle beyond, the chaos of the camp erupting into a full riot behind them. They ran until their lungs burned and the gunfire faded into the distance. The jungle swallowed them whole, thick vines and towering trees shielding them from pursuit. Kane's armor was slick with sweat and mud, his rifle down to its last charge. The feline woman stumbled once, catching herself against a tree, chains still dangling from her wrists. Her chest rose and fell in ragged bursts, her fur streaked with blood and dirt. Kane approached slowly, lowering his weapon. "We've got to keep moving. My ship's not far." Her ears flicked, her eyes narrowing at him. Her lips curled, exposing her fangs in a low warning growl. The sound vibrated in his chest, primal and sharp. "I'm not your enemy," he said evenly, though his pulse thundered. "You're free." He cut himself off. The words felt wrong, meaningless after what she'd endured. Her tail lashed, golden eyes locked on him with burning mistrust. She was massive, towering over him, her shadow long and heavy in the filtered light. He could feel the weight of her suspicion, of a lifetime spent under the lash. And he knew, in that moment, that earning her trust would be harder than any battle he'd fought. But he wasn't turning back. For a long moment, they just stood there, two fugitives in the hush of the jungle. He could hear her low, steady growl, like a caged storm waiting to break loose. Kane kept his hands open, rifle slung low, showing no threat. Her nostrils flared as she inhaled sharply, as if testing the air around him, as though scent alone might betray his intentions. When she finally spoke, her voice was rough, guttural, and deep, vibrating with restrained fury. "Why, help me!" The words were halting, broken by a thick accent, but unmistakable. Kane blinked. He hadn't expected her to speak his tongue at all, let alone demand an answer so directly. "Because it was wrong," he said, voice quieter than he intended. "Because they were killing you for their amusement. And I couldn't stand there any longer." Her eyes narrowed. She tilted her head, tail twitching slowly behind her. "Humans always look away. Always obey." Her gaze raked him like claws. "Why not you?" Kane swallowed. He didn't have an answer that made sense. Not to her, not even to himself. "Maybe I'd been looking away too long." Her growl softened, but only slightly. Suspicion still hung on her like armor. She straightened, towering above him, her chains clinking like a warning. If trick, if trap. Her claws flexed, slicing deep grooves into the bark of the tree. Kane met her eyes without flinching. "Then you'll kill me." "Fair enough." They pushed deeper into the jungle, her movements heavy but surprisingly fluid for her size. Kane led the way, checking bearings on his wrist display, while she followed at a distance, never close enough to make it seem like trust, never far enough to let him out of her sight. The forest was alive with sound, distant shrieks, the chitter of unseen things, the low hum of swamp insects. But what weighed most heavily was the silence between them. Kane felt it like a wall pressing in on his shoulders. Once, Her paw-like hand brushed against a vine as thick as his arm, snapping it clean in two without effort. She glanced down at the broken fibers, then caught him watching. Her ears pinned back slightly, defensive, as if strength itself were something to hide. "You'll fit on my ship," Kane said after a while, breaking the silence, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. She let out a sound, half laugh, half snarl. "Small human ship? Not fit. Then we'll make it fit," he said, tone dry but firm. That earned him a sideways look, as if she couldn't decide whether he was arrogant or insane. Maybe both. When the trilene finally broke, Kane exhaled with relief. His shuttle sat cloaked beneath a canopy of vines, its hull scuffed but intact. The feline woman halted at the edge of the clearing, eyes narrowing as she studied it. To her, it must have looked like a fragile thing, small, metallic, utterly unsuited for the raw strength of her kind. Kane keyed the hatch, the ramp hissing open. He gestured for her to follow. She didn't move. Her ears flicked, tail lashing slowly, muscles taut with suspicion. "Take me, where?" "Off this rock. Away from the Orvec," he answered. "You don't have to come, but if you stay, they'll come for you. And they won't stop." Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. She studied him for a long, tense moment before finally stepping forward. Her massive frame creaked the ramp beneath her, metal groaning in protest. Kane winced, hoping the plating would hold. Inside, the ship suddenly felt impossibly small. She had to crouch low, shoulders brushing the ceiling, tail flicking against the walls. She rumbled deep in her chest, unsettled, like a predator forced into a cage. "You weren't built for comfort," Kane muttered. She gave him a sharp look, lips curling faintly. "No." Kane guided her to the cargo bay, the only space wide enough for her to sit without demolishing something vital. She crouched on her haunches, glaring at every hiss of the ship's systems, every flicker of light. The chains on her wrists clinked softly, a reminder of how little separated her from snapping his neck if she chose. He fetched the medkit from the wall. "You're bleeding. Let me." Her ears flattened. She bared her fangs. "No touch." Kane held up his hands. "All right. No touch. But if you don't let me patch that back, infection'll do worse than any whip." She snarled softly, but her shoulders sagged. With deliberate slowness, she turned her back to him, bearing the lashes that still oozed blood. Kane worked carefully, hands steady, cleaning and sealing the wounds with a dermal patch. Her muscles tensed at every touch, her tail lashing dangerously close to his head. When he finished, she didn't thank him. She just sat there, silent, eyes fixed on the bulkhead. Kane sighed and leaned back against the opposite wall, exhaustion crashing over him. "You're free now. You can leave when we hit orbit. I won't stop you." For the first time, her eyes softened, just slightly. But then she turned away, curling her massive frame tighter into the corner of the bay. The ship lifted, engines roaring, canopy trees bending in the blast. Kane sat in the cockpit, hands firm on the controls, watching the horizon tilt as they broke through the atmosphere. His chest was tight, not just from fear of pursuit, but from the weight of what he'd done. He was a deserter now. His comm buzzed faintly with encrypted messages, but he ignored them all. He knew what they'd say: return. Face justice. You've thrown everything away. But when he glanced back, he saw her, the giant feline woman curled in the cargo bay, eyes closed but not sleeping, her tail twitching even in rest. Chains still hung from her wrists, though broken, useless. Her size dwarfed everything around her, yet she seemed fragile in that moment, out of place, stripped of everything except raw survival. And Kane thought, if I have to throw everything away for one right thing in my life, then so be it. The silence of the stars settled over the ship as they slipped into orbit, but inside the cargo bay it was anything but peaceful. The giant feline woman paced in slow, restless circles, her claws clicking faintly against the deck plating. She loomed over crates and supply racks, her head nearly brushing the overhead lights. Every so often, her golden eyes flicked toward Kane with sharp suspicion, as if waiting for the trick to reveal itself. Kane leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, trying to project calm even as his pulse thrummed. "You don't have to stay in here," he said carefully. "There's quarters, though they are smaller." Her ears twitched. She bared her fangs in a humorless grin. "Small human den. Break walls." He almost smiled. "Probably. But I'd rather you break my ship than stay chained in a corner." The words seemed to catch her off guard. Her pacing slowed, tail curling around one leg as she studied him. "Why?" she asked, voice low, husky. "Why speak as if I am more than beast?" Kane's jaw tightened. "Because you are. Because I saw it in your eyes. And because I refused to treat you like they did." She blinked at him, unreadable, then finally crouched again, settling her massive frame onto the deck. But her gaze never left him, still wary, still searching. Hours passed. Kane tried to keep busy, checking systems, charting a course toward the nearest neutral station, rationing supplies. But the weight of her presence filled every corner of the ship. She was too large, too raw, too other for him to pretend things were normal. At one point he brought food, a ration pack warmed over the heater. He set it on a crate near her without comment. She sniffed it suspiciously, ears angled back. "Poison?" Kane gave a tired laugh. "If it is, then I'm poisoning myself too." He tore a strip from the ration bar, chewed it, and swallowed. Then he left the rest for her. She stared at him for a long while before finally tearing into the food with sharp teeth. The ration pack looked tiny in her hands, ridiculous against her massive frame. She devoured it quickly, hunger outweighing her caution. When she was done, she licked her claws clean with slow, deliberate motions, never breaking eye contact. "Still think I am not beast, human?" Kane held her gaze, unflinching. "No. I think you're someone who deserves better." Her ears flicked, but she didn't answer. The days blurred. The feline woman, still nameless to him, kept her distance. She slept curled in the cargo bay, claws gouging deep grooves into the steel as she shifted. Once, when she tried to stretch fully, her legs pressed against one wall and her head against the other. Kane caught himself smirking quietly at the sight. His ship never seemed so small. Once, when turbulence rocked the vessel, she reached out instinctively, her massive hand gripping the console beside him. The steel groaned under her strength. She jerked it back immediately, ears flattening as if expecting reprimand. "Relax," Kane said softly, adjusting the stabilizers. "If it breaks, I'll fix it. Don't worry." She blinked at him, surprised. No human had ever spoken so lightly of her strength, not like it was a curse. Later, when she dozed, he found himself watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, the faint glow of her golden eyes flickering even in dreams. There was still suspicion in her every movement, but he could see something else creeping in: confusion, hesitation. A crack in the wall she'd built around herself. On the fourth day, she finally spoke more than a few words. Kane had been recalibrating the NAV systems when her voice rumbled low from behind him. "You risk death. You risk exile. Why?" Kane paused, hands hovering over the controls. He turned slowly, meeting her gaze. "Because I couldn't stand by anymore. Because watching them break you, it broke something in me." Her ears twitched, uncertain. She looked down at her chained wrists, the steel biting into fur and skin. "You do not know me. You know nothing of Vayari. Why care?" "Because someone has to." She stared at him for a long time, as if searching for the lie. At last she let out a low sound, not quite a growl, not quite a sigh. "Humans always take. Never give." Kane shrugged faintly. "Maybe I'm not like the rest." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more. Still, her tail twitched once, an almost imperceptible flick that didn't feel like hostility. When they finally dropped from faster-than-light near the neutral station, Kane felt the tension in his chest ease. He guided the ship toward docking, careful not to draw attention. The station was a sprawl of steel platforms and neon lights, orbiting a barren moon. A place where credits bought silence and nobody asked questions. He turned to her as the docking clamps locked into place. This is it. You can go wherever you want. No chains. No masters. You're free. Her ears perked, golden eyes narrowing. She studied him intently, as though weighing the truth of his words. You mean I may leave? Yes. Kane forced himself to hold her gaze. You owe me nothing. If you walk out that door, I won't stop you. For a long time she was silent, tail swaying, claws tapping idly against the floor. She glanced at the hatch, then back at him. Her expression was unreadable, but the suspicion in her eyes had dulled, replaced by something else. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. Free but alone. Kane blinked. Before he could answer, she lowered herself to sit, her massive form filling half the cargo bay, and settled her golden gaze back on him. I stay. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than any chain she'd worn. Kane blinked, trying to process. He had expected her to vanish the moment she was given the chance. To leave him behind and reclaim her life, whatever remained of it. But instead, she sat there, massive, scarred, still bristling with suspicion, yet declaring in the simplest way that she would remain by his side. You stay? Kane echoed, just to be sure. Her ears twitched. Not trust. Not yet. But… She looked away, her gaze fixing on the floor, claws tapping faintly. You fight for me. You bleed for me. No one do this before. I do not understand. So I stay. Until I do. Kane leaned back against the bulkhead, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Fair enough. Her golden eyes flicked back to him, sharp again. But if cage… Her massive hand clenched, claws extending with a soft scrape of metal against metal. I end you. Kane smirked faintly. Noted. Life aboard the small ship shifted slowly. The feline woman, who still had not shared her name, became an undeniable presence in every corner. She was too large for the crew quarters, so she claimed the cargo bay as her own, curling against the walls like a predator at uneasy rest. At first, her distrust was palpable. When Kane approached, she would tense, muscles coiling as if preparing to strike. She watched him constantly, her glowing eyes sharp, as though expecting the betrayal she was certain must come. But small things began to chip at her suspicion. He shared his food without condition, even when supplies ran low. He repaired the ship with patience, unbothered when her restless tail knocked over tools or dented panels. When turbulence rocked the ship again, and she instinctively dug claws into the deck, gouging deep scars in the steel, Kane only said, "Adds character," with a shrug. She stared at him for a long moment after that, ears flicking, as if trying to decipher his strange acceptance. It was during one quiet stretch of travel that he finally asked, "Do you have a name?" Kane leaned against the doorway of the cargo bay, arms crossed. She was sharpening her claws idly against the crate, long strokes that made the metal squeal. Her ears swiveled toward him, but she didn't stop. "Name? Something I can call you besides giant feline woman," he said dryly. For a moment she was still. Then she straightened, towering even while seated. "They call me slave. Beast. Monster. No name." Kane's jaw clenched. "Then that ends now. You deserve one. You have one. What was it, before?" Her golden eyes narrowed, wary. But at last she rumbled low, almost reluctantly. "Selah." Kane repeated it softly, testing the weight of it. "Selah." The way her ears flicked at the sound, like a faint tremor of something almost forgotten, told him more than words could. Over time, Selah's suspicion dulled, though it never fully vanished. She began to move more freely about the ship, her massive form squeezing awkwardly through the narrow corridors. Kane couldn't help but smirk at the sight of her crouching beneath doorframes, tail knocking into panels, her claws clicking against the deck. Once, she tried to mimic his movements in the cockpit, crouching behind him as he worked the controls. The seat groaned alarmingly beneath her weight when she tried to lower herself into the co-pilot's chair. Kane stifled a laugh. "You'll snap it in half," he said. Her ears flicked in annoyance, but he caught the faintest curl of her lips, half a grin, though quickly hidden. Another time, when he offered her a ration bar, she picked it delicately between claws that could crush steel, then raised one brow at the tiny thing. "This feed cub?" Kane chuckled. "Hey, it's all we've got." She grumbled but ate it anyway, though her tail flicked in faint amusement. And slowly, almost without realizing it, the air between them shifted. Sayla began to ask questions. About the stars, about human ships, about the places he'd seen. Her voice was still rough, her accent thick, but there was curiosity now where there had once been only suspicion. Kane answered as best he could, leaning back in the cockpit while she crouched beside him, her massive frame dwarfing the controls. He told her about war zones he'd fought in, about cities that glittered with lights like constellations made real. He told her about the silence of deserts, the chaos of markets, the smell of rain on steel rooftops. Sometimes she listened in silence, tail curled around her like a great striped serpent. Other times she rumbled softly, questioning, disbelieving. But always, her golden eyes never left him. And though Kane told himself it was nothing, just a survivor's wary fascination, he couldn't help the way his chest tightened under that gaze. The way something fragile and dangerous stirred whenever Sayla looked at him as though, just maybe, he wasn't like all the others. The neutral station faded behind them as Kane set a new course. He hadn't asked Sayla where she wanted to go. Truth was, she hadn't said. Every time the question hung on his lips, her ears would flick back, and her golden eyes would harden, and he'd swallow it down. For now she stayed. That was enough. The ship drifted through quiet space, stars a river of silver outside the viewport. Kane leaned back in the cockpit, exhaustion creeping into his bones. Behind him, Sayla crouched, her massive presence filling the cabin. She wasn't watching the stars. She was watching him. "You fight good," she said at last, her deep voice carrying like a growl. Kane smirked faintly. "High praise coming from you." Her tail swished, brushing against the console. She didn't seem to notice. "You kill Orvek without hesitation." "Why?" He shrugged. "Because they deserved it." Her eyes narrowed sharp. "Many deserve. Few human risk life. Fewer risk freedom. Why you?" Kane turned his gaze back to the stars. "Because I'm tired of being a good soldier. Tired of following orders that leave people in chains. I don't know if I can make it right, but I can do something." There was a long silence. When he glanced back, Sayla's ears had angled forward slightly, her posture no longer bristling with suspicion. But the distrust wasn't gone, it lingered coiled in her like a second skin. Still, she said nothing more, and Kane felt strangely grateful for the silence. Life aboard the cramped ship settled into a rhythm. Kane patched systems, checked their dwindling supplies, and tried not to think about the calm signals he kept ignoring, the ones from his command, doubtlessly condemning him as deserter and traitor. Sayla prowled the narrow halls like a caged panther, too large for comfort, her claws gouging unintentional marks in the deck. She didn't apologize for the damage. She didn't need to. Somehow, Kane found himself liking the scars she left behind, proof that she was here, that he hadn't dreamed it all. One evening, he found her crouched near the viewport in the cargo bay, staring out at the stars. Her massive form was outlined in starlight, golden eyes reflecting the infinite black. She didn't move when he approached, though her tail flicked once in acknowledgement. "You ever been out here before?" Kane asked softly. Her ears twitched. "Only in chains. Packed in hold, with many. Dark. Cold. No stars." Kane's throat tightened. He leaned against the bulkhead beside her. "Then let this be the first time you see them free." She turned her head, studying him, as if measuring the sincerity in his voice. Then, slowly, she rumbled low in her chest, not quite a purr, not quite a growl. A sound of something she didn't yet understand. It was small things that began to shift the balance. Kane taught her how to operate the ship's galley unit. She towered over the console, claws fumbling against tiny buttons, but she learned quickly, her deep growls of frustration giving way to something that almost sounded like amusement when she finally coaxed the machine into producing food. Another time, when turbulence jolted the ship, she instinctively reached to steady herself, and braced a massive hand against Kane's shoulder. The weight nearly buckled him, but he steadied himself with a laugh. "Careful! You'll snap me in two!" Her ears flicked back sharply. She withdrew at once, almost guiltily. But when she saw his grin, the tension eased from her shoulders. And once, when she tried to squeeze into the narrow crew quarters, her frame wedged in the doorway, shoulders and hips too broad to fit. Kane, chuckling, had to pry a panel loose to free her. She glared at him with bared fangs at first, but then a faint, reluctant smile tugged at her lips. For Kane, those tiny cracks of warmth in her armored exterior meant more than he could say. But trust was fragile. One night, Kane woke to find Sayla looming over him, golden eyes burning in the dim light. His hand flew toward the sidearm on his bunk, but she growled low, stopping him. "You say I free," she rumbled. "But you hold ship, hold stars. If I wish to leave, you let?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was testing. Challenging. The question of a cornered predator still waiting for betrayal. Kane met her gaze, steady despite the tension coiling in his gut. "Yes. If you tell me you want to go, I'll take you wherever you want. No tricks. No cages." They stared at each other for a long, heavy moment. Then, slowly, she stepped back, tail flicking once before she turned away. Kane lay awake long after, heart hammering. But the next morning, she was still there. Weeks blurred into one another. Kane found himself watching Sayla more often than he admitted. Her strength, her grace, even the way she seemed too large for everything around her. She dwarfed the ship's bunks, the tables, the controls. Once, when she sat cross-legged in the cargo bay, she looked like she could cradle the entire vessel in her arms. And yet, there was vulnerability beneath it all. He caught it in the way she lingered at the viewport too long, watching stars with a distant, haunted gaze. In the way she hesitated before eating, as though waiting for the blow that always followed food in her old life. In the way she flinched, barely perceptible, at sudden noises. Kane never called her on it. He just stayed close, steady, patient. One evening, as they shared a quiet meal, she finally spoke again. "You say I am free. But freedom, heavy. Do not know what to do with it." Kane met her eyes. "Then don't decide yet. Stay until you figure it out. Stay until you want something more." Her golden gaze lingered on him for a long, unreadable moment. Then, with the faintest curl of her lips, she said, "Maybe I stay." The first true crack in Sayla's hard shell came unexpectedly. Kane was bent beneath an open-access panel, arm deep in a nest of wiring, when he heard the faint scrape of claws behind him. "Human," she rumbled, voice low but not threatening. He looked up, sweat beading at his temple. "Kane," he corrected lightly. "Name's Kane." She blinked once, then tilted her head. "Kane," she echoed, as though tasting the word. Her ears angled slightly forward, curiosity, not suspicion. He offered a faint grin. "And you're Sayla?" Her tail flicked once in response. "Yes." When he went back to the wiring, she crouched beside him, her shadow swallowing him whole. She watched intently, golden eyes following his every movement. At first it was unnerving, her proximity, the weight of her stare. But after a while, Kane realized it wasn't suspicion anymore. It was interest. "You fix ship," she said finally. "Not afraid of claws, teeth, big beast near." Kane smirked, tugging a wire free. "You're not a beast, Sayla. And besides, if you wanted to kill me, you'd have done it already." For the first time, her lips twitched upward, not in a snarl, but in something closer to a smile. From then on, small moments began to build. When Kane handed her a ration pack one morning, she didn't sniff it suspiciously or wait for him to eat first. She simply tore it open and ate. When turbulence hit again, instead of digging her claws into the deck, she gripped the seat back behind Kane, and when the ship steadied, she left her hand there a moment longer than necessary before pulling away. One evening, Kane caught her humming a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the walls of the cargo bay. She froze when she realized he was listening, ears flattening in embarrassment. "Don't stop," he said quietly. Her golden eyes narrowed, wary of mockery. But when none came, she relaxed slightly, and the rumble returned, like distant thunder rolling across a wide plain. Kane leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. "That's actually kind of nice." For once, Sayla didn't deny him with sharp words. She only kept humming, her gaze softening as she watched him drift to sleep. The next sign came in laughter, or something close to it. Kane had been tightening bolts on the aft stabilizer when he slipped, cursing as the wrench clattered out of his hand. It bounced once, then disappeared between the deck plates with a metallic clang. "Damn it," Kane muttered. Behind him, a deep, rolling sound rumbled from Sayla's chest. He turned, startled, and saw her baring her fangs, not in a snarl, but in amusement. "Small human lose small tool," she said, her voice shaking faintly with suppressed laughter. "Maybe tool too small for clumsy hands." Kane raised a brow. "You laughing at me?" Her ears flicked, tails swishing with mischief. "Yes." He couldn't help it. He laughed too, shaking his head. All right. Guess I deserve that." Her rumble grew louder, and for the first time, it was unmistakable. Sayla was laughing. The sound was rough, rusty, like something she hadn't done in years. And though it was strange and wild, it made Kane's chest feel lighter than it had in a long time. As days stretched into weeks, her suspicion melted into something gentler. When Kane fell asleep in the cockpit after a long shift, he woke to find a blanket draped over him. Sayla wasn't in sight, but the blanket smelled faintly of her, wild earth and smoke. When he nearly burned his hand pulling a hot canister from the galley, she reached out instinctively, her massive hand closing gently around his wrist, pulling him back before harm could reach him. For a moment she held him there, claws sheathed, her touch careful despite her size. Then she released him quickly, ears flicking with something almost shy. Another time, he caught her trying to repair one of the gouges her claws had carved into the wall. She pressed the patch awkwardly against the steel, scowling in concentration. When she noticed him watching, she huffed and turned away, muttering something in her own tongue that he guessed was a curse. "You don't have to fix it," Kane said, smiling faintly. "I don't mind the marks." Her ears twitched, and though she didn't reply, her tail curled loosely around her legs, a gesture that, by now, Kane recognized as relaxation. The turning point came when they crossed a small trade route. Kane had docked at a quiet outpost to restock supplies, warning Sayla to stay hidden in the ship. But when he returned, arms full of rations, he found her waiting by the ramp. "You come back," she said simply. "Of course I came back," Kane said, confused. Her ears tilted back slightly, as if bracing for scorn. "Many would not. Would leave me. Too big. Too much burden." Kane set the rations aside and met her gaze head-on. "Sayla, listen to me. You're not a burden. Not to me. You saved my life back there, same as I saved yours. I don't abandon people I fight beside." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her golden eyes searched his face, fierce and vulnerable all at once. Then, slowly, she lowered herself until they were almost eye level, her massive form crouched close. "You strange human, Kane," she murmured. Her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "But not cruel." It wasn't quite trust. Not yet. But it was something brighter, warmer. And it was enough to make Kane believe they were both beginning to heal. The ambush came without warning. Kane was hauling the last of the supplies up the ramp when the metallic click of rifles being primed froze him in place. "Sergeant Darius Kane!" a voice barked from the shadows of the docking bay. "By order of the High Command, you are under arrest for treason and desertion. Drop the crate. Now." Kane's heart plummeted. Slowly, he set the supplies down and raised his hands. 5 soldiers in regulation armor emerged from behind crates, rifles leveled at his chest. Their visors reflected the harsh docking lights, cold and impersonal. One stepped forward, cuffs gleaming in his hand. "On your knees." Kane swallowed hard but obeyed. His stomach knotted as the steel locked tight around his wrists. The sound of the cuffs ratcheting closed was louder than any gunfire. He didn't fight. Didn't speak. He knew resisting here meant a bullet in the head. But what he didn't realize was that Sayla had heard. Deep in the ship, Sayla's ears twitched at the sharp voices, the tone she knew too well, commanding, cruel, the same timbre her captors had once used. Her fur bristled as her instincts screamed. She stalked closer, tail lashing, the scent of fear and authority stinging her senses. She crouched low as she peered out of the shadows. Her golden eyes narrowed at the sight, Kane, cuffed and forced to his knees, soldiers jeering over him. Her chest rumbled with a growl so deep it vibrated through the metal floor. The sound went unnoticed until she stepped out of the ship's interior, massive frame unfolding like a nightmare given flesh. The soldiers froze. "Contact!" one screamed, fumbling with his rifle. But Sayla was already upon them. Her roar shook the docking bay, echoing off steel walls. One soldier barely raised his weapon before her clawed hand swatted him aside like a rag doll, armor crunching under the impact. Another fired wildly, bolts searing past her fur, but she barreled into him, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease before snapping him across her knee. "Beast!" someone shrieked. "Monster!" Panic spread. The squad broke formation, scrambling to retreat. But Sayla was faster, stronger, unstoppable. She hurled one into the wall with bone-shattering force, pounced on another, claws rending metal and flesh alike. The last soldier turned to flee, boots pounding against the deck. Sayla's massive form closed the distance in 3 strides. She leapt, dragging him down with a feral snarl, and silence fell as his cries cut short. Breathing heavily, fur spattered with blood and her eyes still glowing with savage fury, she turned toward Kane. Kane instinctively flinched as she approached. Bound in steel cuffs, on his knees, he felt smaller than ever, vulnerable before a predator who had just torn apart 5 armed men like they were nothing. But Sayla slowed, her breathing steadying. Her golden eyes softened, and she crouched low beside him. Without a word, she reached out. Her massive hands closed around the cuffs, and with a casual flex of her claws, the steel bent and snapped. The broken pieces clattered to the floor. Kane stared at his freed wrists, then at her. She rose again, towering over him, and without waiting for thanks or explanation, she turned and stalked back into the ship. Kane remained frozen for a long moment, chest heaving, before forcing himself to his feet. He found her in the cargo bay. Sayla sat hunched low, her massive form curled into itself, claws digging into the deck as though to anchor her trembling. Her golden eyes flicked up as he entered, but quickly dropped again. "I killed them," she said quietly, the words rough. "Like beast. Like monster, they say." Kane opened his mouth, but she pressed on, her voice shaking. "Maybe true. Maybe I am beast. Not person. Only claws, rage, blood. Always." "Sayla," Kane began. She growled softly, ears pinned back. "I saw chains on you. Like me. Like slave. Rage took me. Could not stop." Kane crossed the bay, crouching beside her. Gently, hesitantly, he wrapped an arm around her massive shoulder. She flinched at the touch, muscles tensing, but then, slowly, she allowed it. "You're not a beast," he said firmly. "You saved me. They would have killed me, Sayla. Don't ever doubt that. And I'm the one who dragged you into this. I should have known they'd come. I'll do better. I'll keep us hidden." Her golden eyes lifted, shimmering with something raw. Vulnerability. Kane squeezed her shoulder gently. "You're not a monster. You're Sayla. And you're free." For the first time, she leaned into him, just slightly, her massive frame trembling less. Her tail curled faintly at her side, a sign of fragile calm. And in that moment, the cold metal cargo bay felt warmer than any home Kane had known. They stayed like that for a long time, the hum of the ship's systems filling the silence. Kane's arm rested on Sayla's shoulder, dwarfed by her immense size, but steady. Her breathing slowed, the sharpness of her earlier rage fading into something softer, though her ears still twitched as though expecting reprimand. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and uncertain. "You do not fear me. Even after..." Her claws flexed against the floor, scraping faint grooves. "Even after blood." Kane shook his head. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't flinch at first. But fear? No. You saved me, Sayla. You've saved me more than once now. That's not something I'll ever forget." Her golden eyes searched his face, looking for lies, for pity. When she found none, her massive shoulders sagged. "Strange human," she murmured. "Most see claws, fangs. Only beast." "Well," Kane said with a faint smirk, "I've seen the way you fuss over the ship when you think I'm not looking. Beasts don't try to patch wall panels." Her ears perked in mild embarrassment, and she let out a low rumble that might have been amusement. Over the following days, Sayla's presence shifted again. Where she had once prowled the ship like a restless predator, she now lingered closer to Kane. She crouched beside him in the cockpit more often, watching him chart courses and punch in coordinates. One time, he caught her tracing a claw gently across the edge of the console, not gouging, just brushing it as though trying to understand the fragile little machine that carried them. "You're not going to scare it into working faster," Kane teased. Her ears flicked, and she gave him a sideways look. Small ship. Weak. Yet, she tilted her head toward him. Strong pilot. Kane blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "Thanks," he said quietly. She turned back to the stars, but the faint curl of her lips lingered. They shared more meals together, though Sayla still made the rations look laughably small in her hands. Once, Kane tried to slide half his portion across the table to her. She growled low, ears back. "You eat. Do not give to me. Weak human needs more." Kane chuckled. "Weak, huh? You're the one who looks hungry enough to eat the table." Her tail flicked, and she muttered something in her own tongue, something he guessed was a curse, but she ate his offering anyway. Later that night, he found one of her ration bars tucked into his jacket pocket. She didn't say anything about it, and neither did he. Trust deepened in other ways too. During a system check, Kane slipped from a ladder, cursing as he landed awkwardly. Pain shot up his ankle. He hissed through his teeth, trying to stand, but a massive shadow fell over him. Sayla crouched low, ears flat with worry. Without asking, she scooped him up in her enormous arms as though he weighed nothing at all. Kane tensed, startled by the sudden closeness, but she was careful, far gentler than her size suggested. "You break?" she asked, voice thick with concern. "Just twisted," Kane said, startled by the sincerity in her tone. She carried him to the bunk anyway, ignoring his half-hearted protests, and set him down as delicately as if he were glass. Her claws brushed his boot as she inspected the joint, surprisingly deft. "Fragile," she muttered. "Always fragile." "Yeah," Kane said with a faint grin. "But lucky to have you around." Her ears flicked, and though she turned away quickly, the glow in her eyes softened. That night, Kane awoke to a sound, a low, steady rumble. He turned in his bunk and saw Sayla curled in the cargo bay, golden eyes half-lidded, her chest rising and falling with sleep. The sound was unmistakable. She was purring. It was rough, deep, like the hum of distant engines, but steady. For a moment Kane just listened, a strange warmth flooding his chest. Here was a being who had been chained, whipped, called beast and monster her whole life. And now, for the first time, she was safe enough to purr. He lay back down, letting the sound lull him. Before sleep claimed him again, Kane whispered softly, "Not a beast, Sayla." "Never." Her tail flicked once, lazily, as though some part of her had heard. The next morning, Kane found Sayla waiting in the cargo bay. She crouched low, her golden eyes steady, claws drumming faintly against the deck. There was a tension in her shoulders, not the bristling of suspicion but something heavier, expectation. "You fight beside me," she said slowly, her accent thickening as though the words carried weight. "You bleed beside me. Among Veari there is tradition." Kane tilted his head. "Tradition?" Her ears flicked. She drew a claw across her palm, not cutting deep, but enough to let a single drop of blood gleam on her fur. "Blood shared. Mark of bond. Of trust. Not mate bond, not yet. But," she hesitated, struggling for the right words. "It mean I see you. You see me. Not slave. Not master. Equals." Kane's chest tightened. He knew what it meant for her to offer this, for a people broken in chains to still carry rituals of pride, of connection. "All right," he said softly. "Show me." Her golden eyes flared faintly. She reached for his hand, careful, almost reverent, as though terrified of breaking him. With a precise swipe of her claw, she scored his palm, just enough to draw blood. Then, solemnly, she pressed her bleeding hand to his. Her skin was hot, her grip enormous and unyielding, but the contact was steady. Ancient. "No," she rumbled, her voice almost a whisper. "You are not just human. Not just Kane. You are bonded." Kane swallowed hard, his throat tight. "And you're not a beast, Sayla. You're my equal. Always." The low rumble that escaped her chest wasn't quite a growl. It was something warmer, deeper, approval. After that, something changed between them. Sayla's movements softened around him, the suspicion gone from her eyes. She still prowled the ship like a restless predator, still dwarfed the cramped halls, but when her golden gaze found him now, it wasn't searching for betrayal. It was steady. Familiar. One evening, as he worked in the cockpit, she approached and crouched beside him. Closer than she'd ever dared before. Her fur brushed his arm as she leaned in, inspecting the NAV display with narrowed eyes. "Stars are endless," she murmured. "But small when beside you." Kane blinked, caught off guard. That almost sounded like poetry. Her ears flicked in mild irritation, but her lips curved faintly. Maybe Veari speak with claws, not words. But I try." The warmth in Kane's chest threatened to undo him. That night, when turbulence rocked the ship, Kane jolted awake to find Sayla crouched beside his bunk. Her golden eyes glowed in the dim light, her presence filling the room. "You fear?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not anymore. Not with you here." She studied him for a long time, her tail curling slowly at her side. Then, with uncharacteristic hesitation, she reached out. Her massive hand brushed against his chest, claws carefully sheathed. It was the lightest touch she could manage, but it felt like the weight of a promise. Kane's breath caught. He raised his own hand, pressing it gently against hers, his fingers dwarfed by her claws. For a moment, they just stayed like that, two fugitives adrift in the dark, bound by something neither fully understood. Romance didn't come like in the stories, with sudden declarations. It came in small gestures. When Kane nearly dropped a tool, Sayla caught it midair, holding it delicately between two claws before handing it back with a faint smirk. When he offered her his jacket during a cold patch in the life support cycle, she snorted. "Too small. Rip it." But later, he found her curled in the cargo bay with the jacket draped carefully across her shoulders anyway. And one night, as they shared a rare meal of fresh produce from a trade station, she reached across the table. Her claw traced his knuckles lightly, careful not to cut. Her golden eyes softened. "You are fragile, but strong here." She touched his chest with the tip of a claw, just above his heart. Kane's pulse hammered under her touch. "You're beautiful, Sayla." Her ears flicked back, startled, and for the first time, he saw her flustered. She turned away quickly, but the rumble in her chest was unmistakable. It was later, in the quiet of the ship, that the barrier finally broke. Kane sat in the cockpit, head heavy with exhaustion, when Selah patted and silently. She crouched behind him, her massive form a shadow in the starlight. "You never rest," she murmured, her voice low and rough. "Hard to rest when you're a wanted man," Cain replied with a wry smile. She leaned closer, so close he could feel the warmth of her breath against his neck. "You are not alone," she whispered. His throat tightened. Slowly, carefully, he turned, meeting her gaze. Her golden eyes glowed softly, no longer sharp with suspicion, but warm. Open. Before he could lose his nerve, he reached up, brushing his hand against the side of her face. Her fur was soft beneath his fingers, and she flinched, only slightly, before leaning into the touch. Her purr filled the cockpit, deep and resonant, wrapping around him like a blanket. And when she lowered her massive head, pressing her forehead gently to his, Cain closed his eyes and let the moment consume him. For the first time since he'd freed her from the chains, they both felt something neither had known before: home. Cain was half asleep in the cockpit, the stars drifting by in lazy streaks, when he felt the air shift behind him. Selah's presence was impossible to miss, her weight, her heat, the faint vibration of her low rumble. He turned, blinking up at her. She crouched close, closer than usual, golden eyes locked on him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "Cain," she said, voice unusually soft. Her claws flexed against the floor, as though she were struggling with words. "Among my people, we do not hide feeling. If heart beats, we say it. If we want, we show it." Cain straightened, suddenly wide awake. "Okay," he said slowly. Her ears twitched, and she leaned closer, so close he could see the faint pattern of stripes beneath her fur. "I feel something. For you. You fight for me. You sit beside me. You are small, fragile, but heart is strong." Her tail curled nervously. "I think I like you. Do you like me?" The words hit him like a shockwave. Cain's mouth went dry. He opened it, shut it again, his brain scrambling for something to say. Selah, Her ears drooped slightly at his stammering, golden eyes dimming as though she'd expected this. She pulled back just a fraction, and her voice dropped low. "That would be silly," she murmured. "Loving a beast like me." The words cut through him sharper than any blade. "No," Cain said quickly, too quickly. He leaned forward, heart hammering. "No, Selah, it's not silly. You're not a beast. And I do like you. I really do. It's just..." He rubbed the back of his neck, cheeks burning. "Humans aren't usually so direct about these things. We fumble around. Take time. It's different." Her ears perked again, hope flickering in her gaze. "So, you like me?" she said slowly, as if testing the words. Cain chuckled nervously, scratching at his hair. Yeah, I do." Her lips curled into the faintest grin, and then, without hesitation, she asked, "So we are mates?" Cain nearly choked on his own breath. "And mates? What kind of mates are we talking about here?" Her golden eyes gleamed with mischief as she leaned in even closer, the heat of her body nearly overwhelming. "The kind where you are mine, and I am yours." Cain's ears burned red. That's a pretty big leap, Selah." But Selah didn't seem to share his hesitation. With deliberate slowness, she reached for the scrap of cloth tied across her chest, the makeshift garment she'd worn since the camp. Her claws slipped beneath the knot, tugging at the ties. Cain's eyes widened. "Whoa, wait, hold on." He gently caught her wrist, his hand tiny against her massive arm. "Selah, look, yes, we can be that kind of mates, but maybe we don't start with, stripping." She blinked at him, her ears angling forward. "Why not? Among Vayari, direct is best. Because humans..." Cain rubbed at his temples, flustered. "We take things slower. We build up to it. Otherwise I'm pretty sure my heart's going to explode." For a long moment, Selah just studied him. Then her ears twitched, and the corners of her lips curled upward in a grin, playful, knowing. You go red. She teased, her deep voice vibrating with amusement. Human face turns color. Very funny. Kane groaned, covering his face with one hand. Are you messing with me? She leaned closer, her grin widening, her fangs gleaming in the low light. Only partly. Kane dropped his hand, laughing despite himself. God, you're going to be the death of me. Sayla's tail flicked behind her, slow and deliberate. She crouched even closer, until her forehead pressed gently against his. Her rumble filled the small cockpit, deep and steady. I not beast, she murmured. I not slave. You see me. You like me. Kane nodded, his voice quiet but firm. I do. Her golden eyes softened, and for once, there was no suspicion in them, no self-doubt, just warmth. Then maybe, she whispered, we are mates. Slow, as humans say. But mates. Kane's heart pounded, but he couldn't stop the smile spreading across his face. Yeah, Sayla. Slow. But I'd like that. The moment stretched, fragile and perfect. She leaned back slightly, giving him room, though her massive form still filled the space around him like a protective shield. Kane exhaled slowly, finally finding his voice again. You know, Sayla, you're pretty terrible at subtlety. Her ears flicked, and she gave him a toothy grin. Subtlety is for prey. He laughed, shaking his head. Of course it is. Later that night, Kane lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He could still feel the warmth of her forehead against his, the rumble of her purr in his chest. His heart raced at the memory of her words, we are mates. And for the first time since he'd deserted, since he'd risked everything, Kane didn't feel like a fugitive. He didn't feel lost. He felt chosen. In the cargo bay, Sayla curled on her side, her tail flicking lazily as she drifted to sleep. Her lips curled faintly in a smile. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chained, wasn't hunted. She was wanted. And she had chosen Kane.